listening to the Patriot Nation podcast.
All right, welcome into another edition of the Patriot Nation podcast. As always, your boy Pat Lane here with my guy Matt St. Jean. And Matt, unofficially, I think we've done more, but unofficially, episode 200 today. Pretty cool. We've been doing this for quite a while. I was telling someone the other day, I've been hosting a podcast since the year 2017, which is kind of crazy to think about. I think my third podcast ever with my brother-in-law was breaking down or reacting to the Kyrie Irving to the Boston Celtics trade.
Oh,
that's how. So you want to timestamp when I started podcasting. It was right around that time.
See, it was funny. So we have about the same experience there because my podcasting goes back to 2020, but then in college, for basically every semester of college, I had a radio show that we would do, which is that's the same thing for this.
Yeah,
so that goes back to fall 2016. I still remember that Kyrie trade because my two co-hosts on my radio show was in the summer, so we weren't, on the radio. So I remember we had an hour and a half long phone call, and I was standing on my front porch the entire time. 3-way phone call breaking down what was going on with that trade.
It's wild.
My first podcast, though, was summer going into senior year of high school. We very briefly started a political podcast with my friends talking about the 2015 GOP primary.
Oh, my Lord.
I hope that doesn't exist anywhere anymore.
But so it is interesting when you look back and think about, how time has gone by and even the advances in technology. I mean, I remember when I first started doing podcasting, there was an Uber conference. There were a few different things that were like call-in places, but there was no real, there was no StreamYard back then. Skype was around, but it wasn't really used as as it is now. And even Google Meet wasn't the way. So like, I remember I had a little tiny microphone like that big. And it was just like a little microphone and like a microphone stand. And if I wanted to have someone on as a guest, I would FaceTime them from an iPad, and I would literally hold the iPad up in front of the microphone and talk to them. So we were face to face and we were talking. And of course they weren't live at the time, but it was just like, it was wild. And so to think that, you go from there to now, recording live, and my co-host lives in New York City, and
we did the show for 2 years before we met each other in person.
Right. Yeah. So
we were lucky when I was in high school. That show we started, my buddy had a band, so his whole basement was like configured for sound. His whole family are all into music and stuff. So we just went down there, and it was other students who were in our AP Gov class. So we would go down there, and we would just sit at a table in his basement. And he had the microphones in the setup, and he just did everything for us, which was pretty sweet.
That's great. That's awesome. That's awesome. So, all right, enough nostalgia. Let's get into some stuff. There's a ton of stories, a lot of stories to get into. But the first thing, and I think it's a pertinent question. You had posed a question to me that was posed to you by one of your buddies, and I think it's a fantastic question, and I think it deserves some airtime. So let's discuss.
Yeah, so I'm gonna first of all, give a shout out to my friend Ryan Cassidy, he and his brother run a Big East podcast that is awesome for college basketball if you like that and stuff. He asked our little group chat.
What's the name? What's the name of the podcast? Sorry.
The Big East Bar Room.
Big East Bar Room. Okay. All
yes.
Right. Shout out Big East Bar Room over there.
Yeah, they do great stuff. He asked, how much money would you have to put in front of you for your team to lose the Super Bowl? One of the guys in our group chat's an Eagles fan, which is why it came up. But, if you take the money, your team loses. If you don't take the money, your team wins. How much money has to be put in front of you?
It's such a great question. It's such a good question, man.
I have seen numbers as low as 10K and as high as 100K in the group so far.
So here's the thing, right? And I think that this is the biggest part of that question that makes it more challenging for me. And Chad, you can weigh in on this too, if you feel like as well. But the biggest thing that makes it interesting for me is that whatever the money is, right? Maybe everyone in the world doesn't know, but that you made your team lose the Super Bowl by taking that money.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so that's the fascinating thing. And so to me, it raises that bar exponentially because you have to live with the fact that you doomed your team your team was going to win the Super Bowl. Your team was winning the Super Bowl. And then you took that money and your team lost. And if you really are a true diehard fan of that team, you might never get to see another championship. You were right there. You might never get to see another one. And it's because you took X amount of money. Yeah. To me, that money, that number would have to be astronomical for me to really take it. Because the thing is, too, is that I'm talking like life-changing money. $100,000 is a lot of money. Don't get me wrong. That's a lot of money. It's not really life-changing money. It's not. I'm sorry to say it. $100,000 is not a life-changing money. It's not life-changing money. And so for me, it's going to have to be pushing like $1 million. You know what I mean? Like for me, at least, it would have to be like everyone would look at it and say like, all right, I can't blame you for that. Like if I were to tell someone, I would want their first reaction to be like, all right, I totally get it. I understand. You took $1 million.
That's
you know what I mean?
Because my first reaction was just 1 year's salary. Because it's like you're losing 1 year of your life of your sports fandom. You're basically just giving up that year. So it's like, okay, I wanna double the amount of money I made. But when you bring in
so Arthur Blank took the money. That's so good.
I think when you bring in the social aspect, like the idea that people might know and you might have to explain yourself to other people, it has to be higher.
Yeah.
Like I think if you are like a diehard football fan, it's got to be at least six figures. That is, I think, a minimum.
Yeah.
Maybe seven. I think now, given that we're spoiled Patriots fans and I've seen 6 Super Bowl wins in my lifetime, I think the amount would be a little bit lower. Like than for like I think if you're a Lions fan or you're a Vikings fan or a Bills fan, this number is gonna be stupid high. If you're you're the Bills fan who caused them to lose another Super Bowl.
That's a great point. You just don't tell anyone. You don't say anything to anyone. I hit a scratch ticket like this. You can't say anything to anyone. You can't.
You're gonna be walking around like it's gonna be a dead man walking around everyone because it's just gonna be like you're gonna have to carry that knowledge that you're the reason all your friends and family and everyone that you go to work with and school with. This is the reason why they wake up the Monday after the Super Bowl feeling awful. But yeah, I think for the Patriots, okay, I'm gonna go up to 500K for this. When we talk about it, I don't need to hit that 7 figures, but yeah, it's got to be something real significant.
All right, I think that's valid. Ryan brings it up. Who asked the question to begin with? What if you didn't know the outcome? What the outcome would be if you didn't take it? So that does change things a little for me, right? Of course, like that does change things a bit. Where they're not guaranteed to win if I take the money, if I don't take the money, right? And so that you kind of look at it and say like, well, it does drop the price a little bit for me. But again, you're not guaranteed they're not ever winning another Super Bowl. It's just that they're not winning a Super Bowl this year. So theoretically, they could win it next year, right? But I don't know.
So there's another angle to this that we haven't talked about, which is the gambling aspect. And then now that your team isn't winning. So whatever money you just took, you can immediately bet on the outcome of the game and just multiply.
That would be pretty wild, wouldn't it? Whoa. Yeah. Whoa. Okay. Yeah, you get $1
Good.
million for them losing, and then you put that $1 million on. You put literally your entire life savings on the other team winning because you know the other team is
Money
going to
line.
win,
Yeah.
right? Whatever, who cares what it is? Could be 1 point, doesn't make a difference, right? But you put everything that you own on the money line of the other team, and then you basically double the money that you have. It's a good point. It's a good point. That's a lot of money. So
Yeah. If you didn't know what the outcome would be, if you don't take the money, I'm probably back down to the year salary range or 100K or something like that.
yeah, I think that makes sense. I think that checks out
Yeah.
because you don't know if he would have won. You have no idea,
Yeah.
right? But I do think I will say I don't know how you could really truly be a fan of the team after that again.
It'd be hard.
Because I mean, I go back and forth and think about different plays that happened, and oh my God, if Ben Jarvis Green Ellis doesn't get hit in the backfield, against the Giants in 2011, then the pass to Welker never even happens because he picks up 4 yards on that play, and then they're running the ball on 2nd and 6 instead of throwing the ball on 2nd and 11. It's like stuff like that runs around in my head still, 14 years later or whatever. And so it's like for that to then. For you would sit there saying, well, which one was my fault, right? Which one could have were all of these my fault, or is it just one? So that's,
that would eat at you. Yeah.
It's a challenge.
And
you know what I mean?
And again, like your only options are after that point to tell people and be a pariah,
right?
Or to not tell anyone and just have to take that to the grave. Like
that'd be tough. That'd be real tough.
I don't would you be able to there's a point where it's almost so much money that you can't even enjoy it because every time you spend it, you're going to be thinking about why you have it.
Oh yeah, it's blood money, man. Woo.
There's like a short film to be made here about a guy who drives himself, who takes the $1 million and then drives himself insane, trying to give all the money away so he doesn't have to have it anymore.
That's like the telltale heart, right? But for sports fandom.
Yeah. I think there's I don't know if you watched it, but I think there's a nice little segue in here because you mentioned the 2011 Super Bowl.
Yep.
Did you happen to watch the Games with Names with Matt Patricia that just came out?
I didn't watch the whole thing. I did watch bits and pieces, but I did not watch the whole thing.
I think
he's literally a rocket scientist, so he's a smart dude.
I was really Matt Patricia's gotten a lot of crap. A lot of it's been deserved.
Justified. Yeah.
I thought he acquitted himself pretty well in the podcast. He came off as very personable, which I was not expecting in that long form format. Very smart, great memory. You can easily see why Bill likes him as much as he does.
Yeah.
We did get the answer to one important question, which is why in the world did he have a pencil in his ear while having a laminated play sheet? I don't know if you saw this snippet.
No.
The answer is because he kept a notebook as well. In his front pocket, he kept a notebook. So he said his process was that he would take pieces of paper from the notebook and put them on top of the play sheet and write his notes on there as the series was going on. And then once every series was over, he would take a Sharpie and anything that was relevant, he would then copy that onto the laminated play sheet itself. That was interesting. And he also had, not to spoil too much of it, but he had a note about the 2016 Super Bowl that killed me. Apparently, right after the Pats-Falcons Super Bowl, they're on the bus back after the game. Everybody's celebrating. He says that because the game was so intense, he didn't know about the Edelman catch. He didn't know a single play that had happened on offense because he was so engrossed with the defense. And McDaniels was the same way. McDaniels didn't know about the Hightower fumble and some of that stuff. They didn't see the plays. They had no idea. So they were going over everything together, trying to piece together what had happened in the game.
So wild.
And Bill comes up to them, and he's basically like, hey, I'm gonna need you guys to come back in here early tomorrow because we're playing the Falcons next year. We probably gonna get them in the opener, so we need you to come in so we can write down all of our notes so we can be prepared for that game. And they're like, "Are you kidding me? No."
It's complete insanity. I love it. Complete insanity.
I love Bill Belichick for that stuff, man.
Man, that's one of the things obviously we miss, but going back and seeing the Facebook memories of, us toasting champagne or the hump up videos from, from Brady and then Edelman and the Patriots. And that's been fun. It's always fun reliving that this week. And of course, I mean, for me, right, it's, you go back and you look, I was a senior in high school in 2002 when they won the first one. And so like, kind of reliving those glory days back, and thinking about all those things. So, it's fascinating. So anyways,
Well,
but yeah, I don't want to.
Well, we're in that time of the year where it's like Super Bowl reminder week. Every day of the week, it's an
Yep.
anniversary of some Patriots thing, and it's
Yep.
and the further we get from it, it takes on new meaning with more time away, and just different things, and it hits you differently when you watch the old games. Especially for me as someone who was 3 years old when the
Yeah.
first Super Bowl happened, like I don't really have memories of that. But then the older you get, when you have life experiences, and you're able to, have an idea of what your family and stuff was feeling at the time, and you're able to kind of then re-experience the game through a whole new lens, which is kind of cool. And
Yeah.
I took the time to rewatch the full 3 games to glory of the Pats Seahawks Super Bowl over the weekend, which it's funny. That has an easy argument for being the best Super Bowl of all time,
It does.
and an easy argument for being the third best Patriot Super Bowl that
Yep.
they played in.
Yep. Which is wild when you think. I mean, that game, and you think about all the things that went on in that game. But if the Patriots lose that game, if they don't come back, right? If they don't come back, the Seahawks are probably the greatest defense in the history of the NFL. I mean, you're talking about back-to-back Super Bowls beating Peyton Manning in his record-breaking #1 offense of all time, and then Tom Brady in back-to-back years. They'd be the greatest defense in the history of the NFL, right? I don't think it'd be particularly close. And they got all the way to the fourth quarter, and then Tom Brady put up 14 points. And, those are the types of things where it's like, yeah, he got bailed out by Malcolm Butler. Absolutely, sure, at the end of the game. But to put together those two drives were incredible. And and a lot of people forget now, like they were forced to punt early in the late in the third quarter. And then they get the ball back and they got 3rd and 18. And they were backed up far enough where they were going to have to punt that ball. They had no choice. And, and obviously he throws a completion to Edelman, and just an incredible throw, an unbelievable catch. And it's like those types of plays that the Patriots made over and over and over and over again. Every time you needed a big play, they made it. And, it's really incredible. And so that, of course, and then of course you have the Butler play at the end of the game, and the curse catch was just completely insane. And all, over just a million plays back and forth by both teams. It was awesome.
Well, I think 2 plays that go very under the radar when people just talk about this. One of them is Brady's first interception, because Brady throws a pick in the end zone.
Yep.
Very reminiscent of the pick he threw against Carolina in Super Bowl 38. Very much a similar play. And Jeremy Lane picks it, runs out of the end zone, gets tackled. I believe he broke his arm.
Broke his arm. I think you're right. I think it was his arm. Yep.
And tore his ACL at the same time, which he didn't. Side note on this, he didn't know he tore his ACL until months later. And he was in the grocery store and he collapsed, and that's when they discovered that his ACL was also torn.
Jesus.
He just didn't look at the knee because the arm was what was in pain at the time.
Right.
But that's a huge sliding doors moment in that game. Jeremy Lane was a key depth piece in that secondary, and he goes out, and Harold Simon comes in, and the Pats just went after him. What does this game look like if Lane stays in? If Brady throws an incompletion there, Pats kick a field goal, you're up 3-0, and Simon never comes in. What happens? And then the other one, opening drive of the second half, Seahawks drive into field goal range. You got 3rd and 1. Read option. They hand it off to Marshawn Lynch. He gets no yards. Completely and totally stuffed. Patriots had it on the front side and tackled from the back side. Just totally ate it up. one, you're forcing the Seahawks into a field goal, which was the only field goal of the game and ends up being your difference maker at the end. But more importantly, 3rd and 1 and you stuff Marshawn Lynch. You have to think that is in, Darrell Bevel's head when it's, you're down on the goal line and you're trying to get into the end zone, trying to get that final yard. And if the fact that the Patriots got that stop is the reason why the Seahawks are throwing instead of passing, then that one play, a small little thing, becomes one of the most influential plays in NFL history.
It's a great point. That's a great point. And what I don't understand what the Seahawks did, right? The Seahawks got the ball back now with just over 2 minutes left to go in the game, with all 3 timeouts and the 2-minute warning. Complete a long pass on the first play, the wheel route that had worked multiple times, but Marshawn Lynch just screwed it up. And for whatever reason, Jamie Collins couldn't figure out how to cover it, still couldn't figure out how to cover it. And
couldn't do it the next year against Owen Daniels,
which is insane. Like, it's just like, whatever. Anyways, so they complete that pass. Now it's the 2-minute warning. They called 2 other timeouts during that series while the clock was stopped. So when they got the ball with a minute left to go down at the goal line, they have 1 timeout. What I don't understand, I think the Patriots had all 3 timeouts. If they didn't, they had at least 2. What I don't understand is how you allow the Patriots to dictate what you're doing in the game, right? The 3rd and 1 is a great point. They had stuffed them already at goal line. And so Belichick had an idea that they probably didn't want to run into that set again. Not only that, but you also looked at it and you say, well, we can't run it 4 times in a row because we can only stop the clock once. So if we run it once and we don't get in, if we run it again, we have to call timeout. We're going to let the clock run down. We have to call timeout if we run it again. Then if we run it a 3rd time, the game's over if we don't get in the end zone. And so, they really couldn't. They had to run it, or they had to throw it at some point. But what they could have done was after the first timeout, because of course they have the pass to Curse. He steps out of bounds. They call timeout because there's a frenzy and they're all celebrating and it's crazy. And so they call timeout. Fine. You call 2 plays in the huddle. I don't understand what the problem is. You say, okay, if Marshawn gets in, great, we win. If he doesn't, let's line right back up again. You force the Patriots to call a timeout. And they didn't do that. And then I don't understand what they were thinking.
Well, and then you're in a weird spot there where it's like the end of Super Bowl 46. We also don't want to score too fast.
Right.
Give Tom Brady a chance, especially when you don't need a field goal there to tie it.
Right.
You're trying to walk that, and it was. I honestly, personally, I think the only thing Seattle did wrong in the sequence was call something they were a little too comfortable with on the passing concept that the Pats knew was going to be there. And it's like I think if you call anything there that's a pick play with an out-breaking route instead of an in-breaking route, the Pats are probably toast because they are biting on that inside play. They are very ready for it. And they just didn't have, look at the Chiefs-Eagles game coming up. One of the big things with big games like this, it's always that battle internally between doing the things that you're comfortable with, that your players are comfortable with, that that you have been able to execute all season long, and knowing when you have to break from that because the opponent knows it's coming. And, generally speaking, that area is where Brady and Belichick and the Patriots dominated opponents in big games for a very long time. And quite frankly, where the Chiefs have done it in these big moments for a few years now too, because they know what you're going to do and they know how to beat it and they just don't mess it up. And they know, and they're able to beat you at it, which is, I don't know if we want to do a little Super Bowl preview here and segue into it, but
let's do an ad read first, and we'll do a Super Bowl preview.
And then come back and talk some Pats.
Yeah, we'll come back and talk some Patriots. We did want to get to some of the coaching stuff. I saw someone ask about Slater and Troy Brown, and there are other coaches that also won't be coming back, and some other coaches that have been named to the staff as well. So we'll discuss that as well. Maybe we'll get into some of the Senior Bowl stuff as well. But we also got to pay the bills as well.
Yes.
So let's do that, and then we'll go from there. All right. So as you know, I of course am talking about Prize Picks. Okay, Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 10 million members and billions of dollars given out. There's so many different ways to play. There are ways to get in. Taco Tuesday, every single Tuesday, they give discounted numbers where they give you easy numbers to hit, which is great. It's a lot of fun. They're also, for the Super Bowl, giving away a free square for Patrick Mahomes, more than 0.5 passing yards. I don't know what you believe about Patrick Mahomes, but I'm pretty sure he's going to get more than 0.5 passing yards. And so they get a free one. You get a free one over there as well. Now, Prize Picks does also do, and this helped me on an NBA one, they also have injury insurance for you. So if you have a guy in your lineup, as I did with DeJounte Murray earlier this week, and he gets hurt in the first half and doesn't come back, you get your picks refunded, which is awfully nice. And so that one works out for you as well. So you do have some injury risk insurance there as well. So what you're going to do is you are going to download the Prize Picks app. You're going to put in the promo code CLNS, and you're going to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Again, you don't have to win. You just have to play your first $5 lineup. Now, my lineup this week, the Patrick Mahomes free square, you got to do it. It's going to happen, clearly. So that one's got to be in there with everything that you do. I'm going Jalen Hurts for more than 0.5, rush/receiving yard, receiving TD, and Xavier Worthy. I'm in on it again. I was in on it in the first game. It didn't happen. I wasn't in on the second game, and it did happen. Now I'm back in on it in the third game. More than 6.5 rushing yards for Xavier Worthy. Just one carry. All I'm asking for is one carry, Xavier Worthy. That's it. And then, of course, the Patrick Mahomes free square. So, again, as a reminder, get in with me. All right. Download the Prize Picks app today. Put in the promo code CLNS. And when you play your first $5 lineup, you get $50 instantly. Don't have to win the lineup. You just play it. Okay. Again, download Prize Picks, promo code CLNS, and you get $50 instantly for your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. All right. Nice.
I got something for you. Speaking of Super Bowl stuff, at
Let's
the media night thing they're doing right now.
Yes.
Jeffrey Lurie, the Eagles owner, said that whenever they build a new stadium or when they do renovate or whatever, they're going to put a roof dome on the stadium.
Interesting. Okay.
I've got one word for that. Soft.
I agree.
You're Philly. Play outdoors. What is this?
Football is made to be played in the elements. In my opinion, it's made to be played in the elements. But
I gotta say, I don't have a lot of patience for the discussion about how all football should be played like indoors or in good weather. Like, one of the things that makes football great is that it's essentially like the most complicated game of rock, paper, scissors. Like it's all of these different things that can beat you. And part of being a good team is being able to play in many different circumstances. If you want to be a good team, you have to be well-rounded. And the weather tests that, whether it's warm, whether it's cold, whether it's rain, whether it's snow. It tests if you're able to win in different ways. The mark of a good team isn't necessarily being able to do one thing at an elite level. It's being able to do many things at a great level. So the Patriots did for many, many, many years. And you want to be a good team. You want to be good at a lot of things. The weather should not, be an excuse for you.
I also think too, you get to weed out teams, right?
Mhm.
You know, part of the reason why the Patriots always won so much in January, obviously they were a great team and they did things really
Yeah.
smart, but was because a lot of these teams couldn't handle the cold. Miami can't handle the cold. Indianapolis can't handle the cold. These teams cannot handle it. Houston can't handle the cold. They just can't do it, right? And so it's like they come into this environment already at a disadvantage, right? And then, you know, you send them in the elements and it's like, man, I don't want to be here at all. And so I think that that's an advantage and use it to your advantage. By the way, my dad and TD both asked the same question. Same Jeffrey Lurie, who may buy the Celtics, and that's true. He might buy the Celtics.
He said that he is not going to tonight.
I know. I wish he would, though. I wish he would because for many reasons, but also but the biggest one for me is that he also owns a basketball team, doesn't he? Does he own a basketball team? But no, that's not true. I'm sorry. No. I'm sorry. Josh Harris owns the 76ers.
Yeah.
And also owns the Commanders. And so it was an interesting kind of thing this past week, of course, when Washington was playing Philadelphia. And so I think that would be interesting for him. Obviously Boston and Philadelphia don't like each other. Imagine if the owner of the Eagles, who Philadelphia people love, and that same guy owned the Celtics, who of course all the Sixers fans hate. I think that would just be fun. So, but what are you gonna do?
It'd be a lot of fun. But yeah, Super Bowl.
Yes. So let's get into it. Look here. I so desperately want to feel good about the Eagles actually having a chance in winning this game. It's all I want to do is be able to say the Eagles are going to win. And I don't know how you pick against the Chiefs. I just don't know how you do it. And the Eagles have already lost to them. They should have beaten them last time, and they didn't. And, I don't know what the injury, situation is with Jalen Hurts. I don't know what's going on. So, listen, I'm going to pick the Eagles, but, man, I don't feel good about it at all. I don't feel good about it at all. Because the Chiefs just every single time you do something wrong, they take advantage of it. Every single time. They're just so well coached. They're so smart. They've so experienced. They are cool under pressure. They just don't make those egregious mistakes. And they are what the Patriots used to be.
Yeah.
And so, and I also think too, I don't want to get into a whole NFL rig thing, but it's not the Chiefs have gotten calls. The biggest thing for me and the biggest argument for me when people say, the NFL's rigged and all this other crap or whatever, the biggest sticking point for me is that when's the last time they got a really bad, egregious call against them on the other side of it, right?
They did at one point earlier this season. Or which game? It was sometime in the middle of the season.
Yeah, but that's a regular season game. That doesn't matter. Regular season games don't make a difference. I'm talking about, look, the Patriots had quite a few of those, right? Yeah, the Rob Gronkowski regular season one against Carolina where Luke Kuechly tackled him in the end zone, right? But I'm thinking the Champ Bailey chase down, which is just insane that was called out of bounds at the 1 yard line, breaks all the rules of science and physics that we know, and somehow was still spotted incorrectly. The Corey Clement touchdown play, right? And there was another one in I forget which one it was. I actually tweeted it out because I was like, those three were just so egregious and obvious, and it was just like, this is who the Chiefs haven't had anything like that, and I think for me that's one of those big things where I look at it and say, man, this is that's the one. Oh, the intentional grounding one. The intentional grounding play in Super Bowl 46. Just absolutely embarrassing. Embarrassing.
I I think that's one of those that is technically the correct call. I've just never seen them. I've never
It's
seen them call on an
insane.
overthrow in the play like that.
Right. And it wasn't even like there was a guy, he threw it at the guy, he just threw it over his head. And it was like, what are we even talking about? Maybe he ran the wrong route. Like, what are we even talking? He
When
threw
they
it
give,
into the middle of the field.
yeah, they give wide latitude on that, and it was weird that they didn't on that. But yeah,
Right.
I think the Chiefs are going to win this, just because I think this is a bad matchup for Philly. I think there's two things on this. One, we've seen Jalen Hurts' pocket presence, and we've seen Spags' blitzes, and those things mix like oil and water
Yep.
for your offense. So if Philly has to play from behind it all, or if they have to win with their drop back passing game, good luck. I do not like their odds.
They're in trouble. Yeah.
But I think the more concerning part is that Vic Fangio does what he does on defense. And the Chiefs are built to play that kind of game. Like Vic Fangio's whole thing is we're going to put a ceiling on your offense. You're not getting plays more than 15 yards. And you're not going to get more than 10 yards usually. You're going to have to check it down and check it down and check it down and beat us. Well, Mahomes has proven that he can do that and do it without making mistakes. So, like, I think if you're the Eagles and you want to win this game, you got to do two things. One, you have to win the line of scrimmage on offense. You have to. You have to stay ahead of the chains. You have to run the ball. Saquon's got to be electric. It's going to be a Saquon game if they win. And you got to come out with something different on defense. You have to have a changeup. You look at when the Pats beat the Rams in the Super Bowl in 2018. It's because they basically redid their entire defense in the 2 weeks before the game and came out and played that Vic Fangio style of quarters or cover 6 or whatever, and were able to play it at a high enough level to beat the Rams with it.
Mm-hmm.
So can you do the reverse if you're Vic Fangio? Can you come out and bring some man coverage, bring some exotic blitzes, basically do the opposite? Dare Patrick Mahomes to go over your head with Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy. And he might. Those guys are fast as all get out, but they're also inconsistent players. And I think that if you're Philly, you'd much rather your defense come down to a couple throws downfield to those guys rather than betting on Mahomes not being able to beat you with paper cuts.
I would agree. I think that's a great point because Mahomes will take it. He doesn't care. Right. And that's one of the big things that he's really done a nice job of. And honestly, I think a lot of the guys have done a nice job. Josh Allen's done a pretty good job of it too. He doesn't have the weapons and Mahomes again doesn't really have the weapons either, but he has Travis Kelce. But Mahomes is okay, right? He made a living throwing the ball downfield when he first got in the NFL. And now, 7 years later, he's checking it down. He's checked down Charlie. And he's doing that because you're not giving him the deep throw. But he says, all right, I'll take the short throw. Like that's just smart winning football. I mean, like that's all it is. So, if you're not going to let me throw downfield, I'll throw it short and I'll be accurate and I'll make quick decisions and I'll make accurate throws. And, we'll beat you that way instead. And so I think that, that's that really, to me, I agree with you. Like, give him some of those down the field throws if you want, but like take away the short underneath stuff. Take away the middle of the field with Travis Kelce and, make Hollywood Brown and Juju Smith-Schuster and Xavier Worthy beat you on the outside. Maybe they will. But like if they do, then you can live with that. I don't think you should live with them beating you with crossing routes with those guys because you're going to lose with those guys. They're too fast. So,
yep. And I think you have to be unpredictable. I think that is a big key of this too, because like the Eagles have kind of won all year long by just doing what they do and being better at it. That's fine. And maybe you win this game this way. There's a world where the Eagles just dominate the line of scrimmage, and it's kind of like the Bucks Chiefs Super Bowl.
Yeah.
But like, unless you're able to kind of dominate that way, it's probably going to be a close game. If it's a close game and you're predictable, the Chiefs are going to beat you.
100%.
Like For how many years did we talk about how we knew the Pats were going to beat the Steelers because we knew what the Steelers were going to do because they do the same thing every year? You could just go out there and beat them as long as your players are good enough. You know what plays you have to call and you go out there and execute it, and you're going to win. Like, you give a great team the opportunity to just play that way, and yeah, they're going to beat you. So I think it's the Chiefs. I'm rooting for the Eagles, but like I picked against the Chiefs all season, and I think the opportunity to take a kill shot was there in the middle of the season. Teams didn't do it. Now they're healthier, playing with more confidence, and like, you know, they're used to this stage. Nothing is going to freak them out at this point. The last 2 Super Bowls they have executed when it mattered the most at a high level, and in both cases, you know, either by doing things that the opponent didn't see coming, or by knowing what the opponent was going to do and just drawing up something exactly for that offense and defense. And like, until I see them fail in one of those moments, I'm just going to assume that they're going to execute it.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. The Mahomes versus Brady stuff is just exhausting. It's just exhausting. And when you get people like Nick Wright and guys like that who will just basically say it doesn't matter, Mahomes is the greatest ever. And it's like, that's fine. And 3 in a row would be an incredible achievement, of course, right? 4 of his first 7, of course, would be incredible. Clearly, right? Like that's of course that's incredible. But I just think that we're a long way. He's a long way off from where Tom Brady was. And I think the other part of it too is that what makes what Brady did, I think what makes what Brady did so special is that he did it in 2 different eras with 2 different teams. That first Super Bowl era, right? That first dynasty era was in the old school, hard-nosed football, right? Where you could hit the quarterback late and you could hit him after the play and you could deck wide receivers coming across the middle and you could do all that stuff. That was all legal back then. That's when Tom Brady started playing, right? I mean, of course, you remember the famous play with him where he's sliding and the Bills take his head off and his helmet goes flying 15 yards and he gets up, clapping his hands and puts his helmet back on and gets right back in the play. And like, I mean, if you did that to Patrick Mahomes now, you'd be suspended for 5 games. Like shoot, the Texans guy who did it to, who did he do it to? Shahir.
Well, Trevor Lawrence.
The guy who did it, he got suspended for 3 games for doing the exact same thing. Now, Lawrence got hurt and Brady didn't, but like, that's not the point, right? The point is, it was the same play. Brady was going down for a slide. Lawrence was going down for a slide. It's the exact same play. And that's a play that, like, hey, that just happens in the NFL sometimes, right? And so that's what's really fascinating for me is that he did it in that era, went undefeated in 2007 with a totally different system, made the Super Bowl again in 2011 when they had no business being there, and then won 3 out of 5. And you're just like, what the hell? Like, and so it's like to do all of that in and then to go to a new team and win a Super Bowl in the first year, right? And they would have won again. When the Rams won the Super Bowl, they had the Rams beat. They came back from that huge deficit. They were beating the Rams. The game was over. They were winning.
Yeah.
And stupid Todd Bowles ran a 0 blitz. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
It's insane why you would ever run that play. And Cooper Kupp beat you deep, and it's like, well, and then you lose. And so if he had won that one, I mean, like 8 would be insane. But it's just like he almost did it again. And that's what's crazy to me.
It's funny how much 2021 just looks like a total aberration on what the NFL has been lately. Like, it's been basically all Brady or Mahomes dominance.
Yeah.
For a while, with the exception of that 1 year when, what do you call it? You just get kind of 2 fluky-ish losses by both of those teams at home in very close games. and you end up with two different teams in the Super Bowl. But yeah, and I think Brady Mahomes, the comparisons are going to exist. Of course they will. I think we should be mindful of the fact that Mahomes has been throwing to like 2 Hall of Famers for a significant, or at least 1 Hall of Famer for a significant portion of his career. And Brady didn't get that luxury until 07, to start getting that kind of talent around him. And if we should be comparing what we're seeing from Mahomes now to the Brady 2011 to 2018 run, or 07 to 2018, when he's got that kind of crazy talent around him.
Right.
And the offense is able to deliver year over year over year. Let's see how Mahomes looks when Kelsey goes away, when Andy Reid retires. Like, it'll be different. If he keeps it up, props to him. But and if Mahomes keeps this up, he probably will end up surpassing Brady, and that's fine. But the endurance, the longevity of it is a very important part of this discussion. And Brady also kind of has the trump card here of beating Mahomes twice in playoff games. One of them at Arrowhead Stadium.
Correct. Yep. And then they went in the Super Bowl. So
which was at home.
But
also COVID limited crowd. It's not you're not getting a home environment for that. You do get home sleep in your own bed and all that. But
correct. Yeah, but it's interesting. And so that, look, it's a fascinating question. It's a fascinating situation. I understand what's going to happen. I know that people are going to rush to say that Mahomes is the greatest quarterback of all time. People are already doing it, right? But I think we forget sometimes. We don't forget as Patriots fans, but I think the general we forgets how great Brady was and how great he was for so long. And this is one of the things that, when you talk about Kelsey or Gronk, it's one of the interesting things for me, right? That's a conversation that comes up. Well, was Kelsey ever as dominant as Gronk was for one game, right? Was Kelsey ever as dominant? If you had to pick one dominant tight end for one game, you'd pick Gronk over Kelsey. You just would. You'd pick Gronk over Kelsey.
Yeah.
Right? And so, but Kelsey has a lot of longevity. His numbers are better than Gronk's numbers. And so you can sit there and say, okay, well, the numbers are very different. And so then the numbers would favor Kelsey. The problem is that if you want to go with longevity numbers, you have to go with Tony Gonzalez. Nobody touches Tony Gonzalez.
What's funny is that I think Travis Kelce does have an argument for the best tight end ever. There's an argument that he's not even the best tight end in Chiefs history.
Right. Which is wild. So when you think about it, you know what I mean? So that's the hard part. It's okay, well, do you think Gronkowski was incredible for the period of time that he played? And he was hurt a lot, and he didn't play a ton, and his career was limited, and all that stuff. That's definitely true. And so, of course, Kelsey has a longer window, and Kelsey's numbers are greater. But his numbers don't even hold a candle to Tony Gonzalez's numbers. Not even close. And, his numbers really aren't even as good as Antonio Gates' numbers.
Yeah.
So that's where that longevity piece. And by the way, Kelsey's a better tight end than Antonio Gates. He's probably a better tight end than Tony Gonzalez, if we're being honest with each other, right?
Well, and he's all that Jason Witten superpower of just somehow never being covered on an important play.
Yeah.
Kelsey has that, but he's also done it in the Super Bowl and in the biggest moments repeatedly, which just kind of adds to the legacy. He's not necessarily my style of tight end. I love what Gronk brought as a blocker as well. But if you prefer Kelsey, I get it. I would go Gronk as a Patriots guy, and I love the physicality that he brought. But if you prefer Kelsey and what he has done, I understand it. He's really, really good at what he does, and his ability. I think one of the other things with the Chiefs, they have a couple players which have the ability to turn it on when it matters. Chris Jones on defense, Travis Kelce on offense, and that's why they're kind of a sleeping giant in the regular season, because they don't have to. They can play 80% then and get by, and then you get to the playoffs and they tuned it up. And that's what the best players are able to do. One thing I did think was interesting. I think they mentioned this on. which I've listened to like so many podcasts in the last like 48 hours. They're all blending together. One of them, they were talking about, can Jalen Carter be that defensive guy in the Super Bowl? Kind of the Chris Jones, but for Philly, a guy who has that freak talent to just absolutely take over. I think Matt Patricia on the podcast, because he's with the Eagles last year, talked about how they had a practice where they basically had to shut down the practice because Jalen Carter was ruining every single thing that they were trying to do. And if he can go out there and do that, pick his spots in the Super Bowl and make that is where the Eagles can kind of reverse some of the magic the Chiefs have brought by just being a better situational team.
Right. I agree with you. By the way, TD is saying that Ben Coates has better numbers than Travis Kelce, and that's complete lunacy. No. Ben Coates has 1 year where he went over 1,000 yards. Ben Coates is an incredible tight end for the Patriots.
Yeah,
incredible tight end for the Patriots.
He's tiers below Kelce.
He's light years below Travis Kelce. And so let's not be crazy here. But again, I think that Gronk has that. But anyways, I think it's a great point about Jalen Carter. I think that, when you look at the individual talents and the ability to just take a game over, you look at what Saquon did in the first play against Washington. The first play goes for a 60-yard touchdown, right? And, that to me, at least, is one of those things where you look at it and just said, like, they had that covered. They had it covered. And Bobby Wagner ran into his own guy. And because Bobby Wagner ran into his own guy, he runs for a 60-yard touchdown, right?
Yep.
And, and so it's like you make one mistake and you lose, right? And it's the same thing with a guy like Carter. It's the same thing with, and Josh Sweat. I like Josh Sweat a lot, but like, I just think with Jalen Carter, you miss him a few times and he blows the guy up in the backfield, or he gets in the backfield and hits Pacheco as he's handing the ball off and it's a fumble and they recover it. Like, it's those types of things which can change the game, right? And Chris Jones is that type of player as well, for the Chiefs. And so there are a few of those guys where it's like you have to account for them on every play and you have to do everything right because they could turn the game in an instant, in a single play. And so that's what's interesting, is that both of these teams are loaded with guys like that. And so, I think for the Eagles to win, they're going to have something like Jalen Carter, or you're going to have Saquon Barkley go off, just off.
I think he'll have to dominate this, which I think is, what do you call it? Like, I think it's very possible Saquon is a special player. If he dominates this game, wins Super Bowl MVP, I don't think many would be surprised by that.
Right. I agree.
Yeah. But yeah, all right. Should we get into this ad break and come back?
Yeah, let's get in the ad break and then we'll come back.
Stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Well, I am going to talk a little game time with you guys. You guys know I'm a big fan of game time. We got the Super Bowl coming up. If you're, I doubt there's many Chiefs or Eagles fans in here, but if you're trying to get to this game, you can use game time, or, I think we want to talk something more regional. We got a Celtics Mavs game this week, which I think just got a little bit more interesting. They're playing in a couple days. Game time picks is going to make getting tickets to that even easier. It filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of seats to find the best value. You pull up Game Time. It's Thursday night game, 7:30 at the Garden, Mavs Celtics. Go to Game Time, pull up this. You're going to hit all-in pricing. So the price you see is the price you're going to pay for these tickets. You're going to hit Game Time picks. It's going to filter out, the tickets you weren't going to consider in the first place to make it nice and simple for you. Some of the options you got if you want to go to this one. They got a zone deal right now up in the nosebleeds. You can get in the building for $107. I got one for $110 up in the nosebleeds. You want to get down, sit closer to the floor. I'm seeing tickets for about $250 here. And if you want to get, a lot closer, you could pay, $426 or something, pretty close to the floor. You got $489 behind the basket if you're really trying to throw around some money. Should be a very interesting game. If you're trying to go to this one, you can do it more easily with Game Time, and you can see what the view is going to be from your seat from the website, from the app, so you know exactly what you're getting yourself into. They got a lowest price guarantee, where they're going to credit you with 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
All right. Nice.
Yeah. Do we want to? Well, we got to talk about let's do the Pats, and we can circle back to this Luka trade because I feel like we got to mention that now.
I think we do. Yeah. I mean, it's yeah. So let's get into some Patriots. There were some coaching moves, as someone in the chat pointed out. Troy Brown not coming back. Matthew Slater not coming back. Although the Slater one was interesting because it didn't necessarily say that Slater wasn't coming back. It said that Slater wasn't coming back in his role from last year. It's the wording of it. Now, I assume he's not going to be back, but the wording of it, I was curious if it could just have been worded strangely, but the way I read it, I was kind of like, oh, I wonder if he'll be back doing something else. And I think probably not, but just the wording of the announcement was a little strange.
Yeah. I gotta say, like that, the Slater one to me is confusing. This is someone who lives and breathes Patriots, lives and breathes special teams, has a great relationship with Brendan Schooler, seemed to have a great, role with the existing coach. Like unless Jeremy Springer was like, hey, I'm trying to establish my own thing here, where we want to move on. Like, I don't understand.
Seems strange. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't get, especially when you're bringing in a former player as the head coach. Slater seemed to be good at what he's done. He's an expert in this stuff. Someone who taught himself a lot of the things that he did. And, clearly his coaching worked with Schooler, training him for this season. So I'm not sure I understand that. It seems pretty clear that the new staff with Mike Vrabel, they want to clear out a lot of
Pretty
what
much
was
everyone.
there.
Yeah.
Steve, what was it? It was said that Steve Belichick and Mike Pellegrino had the option to return.
Oh, yeah. Both were open to return and were asked to not return.
Which, is a whole new world here. Again, I want to talk about the bigger picture stuff in a second, but like, I don't really know how much I like those moves to let some of these guys, like Troy Brown, I'm fine going because I'm not really sure what he did, but the other guys, Steve Belichick, Mike Pellegrino, Matt Slater, all seem to be well liked and good at what they did, and I don't see such a drastic schematic departure coming that you needed to get rid of those guys. So
yeah, the Pellegrino one for me especially, I didn't love. I don't know why they did it, to be honest with you. And I guess that's not true. I guess I understand why they did it. I just don't like the fact that they did it, I guess is what I'll say. I know that they have them. I'm sure that they have a way they want it to be taught. And I guess that Pellegrino wasn't teaching it the way they wanted it to be taught or whatever the case may be, but it just seems strange to me that they didn't bring him back. So, but what are you going to do? I mean, again, I have to just sit here and trust Mike Vrabel that he knows what he's doing. The thing I don't love is that he's like continuously now bringing in guys from Tennessee that he worked with, which again is fine. I don't know, but
yeah, I don't. There's a couple of hires that he made that I question. I want to first go to one that we haven't talked about on here yet, or at least I haven't, which is the Doug Marrone offensive line coach hire. Doug Marrone was last with the Saints, and he was there in 2022 and 2023. In 2022, the Saints ranked, according to PFF, 26th in pass block grade and 26th in run block grade. Now, they improved in Marrone's second year. They were 26th in pass block grade and 25th in run block grade.
and not great.
Yeah, one spot in run block, right? That was it. And Marone was fired at the end of the year. He was with Bama for 1 year in 2021. Yeah, it's possible that he's going to be a good offensive line coach for them. He's clearly experienced. I don't know if he's good. I'm actually quite skeptical that he's actually a good offensive line coach. Like the Saints line has kind of been a disaster for a little bit now, and he didn't do anything to help that. And yeah, I think you look at Mike Vrabel in Tennessee. His legacy in Tennessee, to a degree, was that the offensive line fell into disrepair, and that's not all on him. Like, that's front office too.
Right.
But he had been criticized for his offensive line coaching selections. And is Doug Marrone the guy that's going to, like, raise this offensive line to a new level? I don't know if I buy into that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. Now, I will say, as far as the offensive line is concerned, multiple people, multiple outlets have reported that Dante Scarnecchia will be around the building a lot. Now, what that means, I don't know. Right? I don't know exactly what that means. But that's having Scar around at all is helpful, I think, and so I'm hopeful of that. I do think Doug Marrone was better at BC last year, but who knows? As far as that goes, I do think that they're going for experience. Obviously, I don't love the Todd Downing signing either. That was a bizarre one to me. Like, look, he's been an offensive coordinator for a while, right? He was, he's had a few different stints as offensive coordinator. I don't love that, right? And so that's one of those positions that I just didn't, look, I mean, he's the Jets passing game coordinator in 2023. I don't think you can blame him for what happened for the Jets in 2023. Obviously, Rodgers goes down 4 plays into the season. That's not really his fault. But he was also the passing game coordinator this year. And the passing game for the Jets sucked this year. And again, maybe some of that's on Rodgers. But like, he's a quarterback's coach. Like, he's been a quarterback's coach. He was a tight ends coach for a few years with the Vikings and then the Titans, but he's never been a wide receivers coach. So I don't know why he's now a wide receivers coach. That one didn't make any sense to me. Wes Welker was sitting right there. He's done a pretty good job in San Francisco. I was kind of surprised they didn't try to bring him back. So I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is, but I don't love the Downing one. And again, we'll see. We're just going to see what happens. But yeah, there's definitely a few that I was just kind of like, yeah, I could have done without that one.
Downing, the Downing one's weird. Downing also, he got fired in Tennessee after a DUI. He, what was it? They played like a Thursday night game in Green Bay.
Yep.
And at 2 a.m. in Nashville, or in Tennessee, he's getting pulled over for a DUI, which I was just reading. I didn't know all of the details. He was going over 100 miles per hour. Apparently, he was on his way home because there were like people had made like death threats to his family or something, and like the police were also en route to his house. So I don't know all the details with that, but he did serve time in like the local jail for that. So like one of the issues that's mentioned with Vrabel in Tennessee is that he was kind of loyal to his guys, and those guys weren't that good. Like, he just wasn't evaluating very well internally. Right. And like, okay, well, here's Todd Downing again, and he's coaching something new that he's never done before. And it's there's a lot of experience in this coaching staff, but it's a very weird mix of things. Josh McDaniels is that head coach of the offense here. He's going to be offensive coordinator, but his staff feels like it was very much picked out by Mike Vrabel so far. Yeah, and like, he's got Thomas Brown there with him, who is very different stylistically, and who track record with young quarterbacks. His last 2 stops has not been very good. And what do you call it? They're keeping Ben McAdoo, though unclear what his role is actually going to be on the team. And it's just like, okay, I don't see how the pieces like it's good
Yeah.
we got experience. Experience is not the only factor in if you're a good coach.
Right.
We've gone from
How do
no
those pieces
experience.
fit?
Yeah, we've gone from no experience to a lot of experience, but are we just saying, are we just overcorrecting and only looking at one facet of being a coach? You also have to be good at it.
Right.
Like we know the NFL. You could be a very experienced coach without ever actually being a good coach.
That is correct.
How long did Jeff Fisher coast off of a Super Bowl appearance in 1999? Like,
It's a great point. It's a great point.
um,
I mean, and look, I think the McDaniels hire was a slam dunk. I've
yeah,
come
I
around
like
on it. I think the Terrell Williams was a great pick as well. That
mhm.
was a really good signing, a defensive coordinator. And I really do like the Thomas Brown hire quite a bit because I know he's very stylistically different from
Yeah.
McDaniels, but I do think that there's something to be said about having different voices in the room as well.
No, I think
Um,
that's a good thing.
and having new eyes. I like that. And so again, it's not perfect, but I do think they hit a few good ones. But yeah, some of these other ones you're kind of just like, yeah, I don't know. The Patriots have real serious concerns at wide receiver right now. What I would have liked to have seen was them bring in an experienced wide receivers coach who's going to coach these wide receivers up to be professional wide receivers. And instead, we got a guy that's never been a wide receivers coach who has been a failed offensive coordinator multiple times and was fired from Tennessee and was just with the Jets and their anemic offense for the last 2 years. It doesn't really,
It's
fill
not
me
inspiring.
with confidence,
Yeah. Well, and I think one of my concerns, like I'm all about having differing voices in the room. I think that is huge for building a winning culture because you have to have guys that can see things differently from you to push you. That said, are these voices different in a strategized way?
Right.
Because in some ways, it kind of feels like this is Josh McDaniels coaching Mike Vrabel's staff. And if that's how it is, okay, like, are we gonna have butting heads internally? Are McDaniels and Vrabel on the same page about what they want from these guys? Who I'm trying to remember all the guys. Is there anyone on the staff that's like, oh, that's a McDaniels guy?
I don't think so. No, I
Which
don't.
is
There might be. Oh, man, who was it? I feel like that there was one guy um, that I feel like there was one guy that I was like, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. But
okay.
outside of that, not really. Right? Not really.
Yeah. Which to me, that's strange.
Strange, right?
It might be strange in a good way. I'm open to that. I'm open to this being, their shared philosophy of doing this. I think there's also a world in which it just ends up being kind of awkward and muddled. And yeah,
I
I don't know.
think Riley Larkin, I think you could argue is a McDaniels type of guy. I don't know if he's McDaniels guy or not.
Is he the John Carroll guy or no?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, then that counts as a McDaniels guy.
But he's an offensive assistant. It's not like he's,
Yeah, that's somebody you're grooming for something down the line.
right.
Yeah, so I don't know what this is gonna look like. Um, it's a weird amalgamation of things, and I look at the big picture of this team, and it feels like we're back where we were last year, except now we have a quarterback in a way that's like I don't know how much they're going to spend in free agency this year because it does feel like again they are trying to figure out internally who they even are. Like I think there's going to be a lot of evaluation from a new coaching staff of what they have there and who fits the culture. And I don't know how much money they're going to want to spend on outside players who might be unknowns from a culture perspective when they're trying to build something new.
Right.
So you might not see a lot of splash signings. You might see them signing more conservatively like they did last year, signing guys that they're familiar with to be role players while they're going to try to draft players and see who fits. Um, you might see a ton of roster turnover. Like I think that's been hinted at here. And I think you see Pellegrino, Belichick, Slater go. that says a lot of we are doing things our own way, regardless of
Mm-hmm.
past performance.
Mm-hmm.
That means, like, unless you're Drake May or Christian Gonzalez, you should not feel good about being in New England in 2026 if you're on this team right now.
Agreed. I agree with
Or
that.
even 2025 for a lot of players, 2025. Like
Yeah. And I think
I feel
I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that's a good way
I
to
think
look
it
at it with the way they've played the last few years.
no, and I think it probably needed to happen, but it's also one of those where like, okay, if you had guys in the 2022 or 2023 draft classes that you were hoping this is the year they might finally break out, those guys are probably just getting cut. Like they're not part of this team. Like we are multiple coaches away, multiple front office setups away. These guys have nothing invested in those players, but unless they show something that's like we got to keep them, probably not keeping them. They're gonna go for their own guys. You know, are they gonna keep Jaheim Bell or are they gonna go get somebody they're more familiar with? You know, I name was it Michael Mayer, Raiders tight end comes to mind there.
Yeah.
Someone drafted under McDaniels. Like, do they go out and get somebody like him, and that's gonna be your new third tight end? And you'll probably see that all over the roster, is my guess. And you'll see how good these players end up being. Like it'll be good for the culture. They'll bring in something new, fresh, I think more professional than what they've had. It also just might not translate really to wins year one. You know, it might be a better team, but it might be a 6-win team.
Which I don't think is the end of the world, by the way. I don't, you know. But
I think it's fine. I want to see what the vision is going to look like for the future. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we get to, you know, month and a half from now and they're throwing money around and they're going after some big name guys. But I just don't get that vibe right now. Especially what we've heard about Vrabel and his aversion to signing injury-prone players. Like, is he going to want to throw a lot of money at T. Higgins or Chris Godwin?
yeah, probably not. Probably not. I will say I do like Darius Slayton. I think is a guy that makes some sense as a lower level target, but I do think that you need more than just Darius Slayton, right? And so,
Well, it's a roster. It's a wide receiver room full of threes and
correct.
fours.
Yeah,
They need another one. Like it's at a certain. This is also where it's tough because you have to manage signing players who make your team better, who build your culture, with not signing guys who will take young guys playing time. Like the issue with the KJ Osborne signing, it's like sure in theory it's a floor raiser, but like you don't want KJ Osborne out there over some of your younger players because you're
right.
trying to develop them. So you just get stuck in this middle ground. Like if you're gonna sign guys who you think are clearly better than what you have, or pivot towards the draft and try to go with the younger players, signing a bunch of second, third rate guys probably isn't it. It's not going to be what elevates your team. You know, it's just going to be more of what they have.
Yeah, yeah. We'll see. We'll see. It's the long off season to go, and we'll be talking about it. We're going to talk more in our next show about the Senior Bowl as well. We just don't have time to get into all that. We just don't.
Yeah.
You know, we're already an hour in. But yeah, I don't know. I think. Do you have anything else you want to add? I know we have to do our prize picks rosters. Anything else that you wanted to add before we go?
Just like I'm curious who they're gonna like out of the Senior Bowl. I don't know if to get into detail here, but like I think it's clear that they need like a faster outside receiver on this team. And I don't know who that is in this draft class. Like, I don't know if there is one. It might be like outside of like Travis Hunter. I just don't know if there is that guy in this class. So you're kind of in a weird situation there where you know what you need and it might not exist in the market for you. I don't really know what the fix is for that. You know, find another way through, I guess. But like, we've been trying to do this for like 8 years now with a fast outside receiver.
I almost feel like you're going to have to trade for him, you know, or theoretically sign him. You just don't have enough draft capital. And I also think too, like you need so much along the offensive and defensive lines that you really have to address that. In my opinion, you have to address that before you draft a wide receiver. You know, But we'll see. I just that's the biggest thing for me is like the offensive and defensive line. Certainly the offensive line, but also the defensive line. You have to shore that up before you do anything else. And you know that's really the issue for me. And so I would love to see the Patriots move down from 4. You know, if Abdul Carter's there, would I want them to take him? Yeah, of course. Depending on what Will Campbell's arms look like, am I okay with him at 4? I guess. You know, if his arms come back big enough, but I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. You know, like if I'm that worried about how long his arms are, I don't know. Does that mean he can play? Look, maybe he's going to be incredible. I don't know. I just that worries me about drafting him at 4.
Yeah. And then you're in this weird spot to like the Browns might trade Myles Garrett.
Yeah.
I'm going to guess Abdul Carter probably just ends up in Cleveland. Like, I think that makes the most sense because I don't think Garrett's trading out if he thinks they're getting a quarterback and making that work this year. Which probably somebody asked in the chat, would you consider trading the 4th overall for Myles Garrett? Absolutely not.
Oh.
Next year's first, maybe, but like I don't. Garrett's worth a first-round pick. He's that quality of player. He's one of the best defensive linemen in the league. He's not worth the 4th overall pick for the Patriots right now. He's just not. Somebody else he'll probably go to a team picking in the 20s, and they'll give up their first for him, is my guess. Like, you know, it'll be Washington, could be the Lions, Packers, maybe. I don't know.
Right. A team like that. And he wants to compete, right? He's not going to come here to compete. I think the Patriots will be better, but like you said, that may not be reflected, you know, in the record books. And so we'll see.
And I think for this draft, I definitely think there's a real situation here where the first 2 picks off the board are Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter. Giants go QB at 3, and you might be in a weird spot where nobody's going to come up to 4 then for a quarterback because they know that the quarterbacks are starting to fall, which is going to give you a big trade up. The top 2 talents are off the board. So now where do you go? Right. I think in that scenario, like Mason Graham is probably the best guy left available. Will Johnson might also be the best player available at that point, but I don't know if you're going to take a pure corner that high. I love him. I think he makes your team better. I don't know if that's the pick you want to make. So Jalen Walker, who's a linebacker for Georgia, who's really good, like in the Dante Hightower mold of guys, a little bit smaller. Michael Williams, who's kind of like a Trayvon Walker type at the end. Will Campbell, there's Kelvin Banks. Like, I don't think they're taking Ashton Genty, but I'll throw the name out there because he's in this tier. Ted McMillan, Tyler Warren is now getting this level of hype at tight end. But like, what's crazy is that of all the guys I just listed, like, you kind of have to take one of them at 4. And in theory, if you could trade back 10 picks, you could probably still get one of those guys. You're just not going to be able to trade back because nobody's going to want to move up.
And that's really the issue, right? If you could trade from 4 to 12, I'd be okay with all of those guys at 12. You're also getting a haul to move back from 4 to 12. But I'm not taking Tyler Warren at 4. That's insane. I don't love taking Will Campbell at 4 because I don't feel like he is undoubtedly the best tackle in the draft. I just don't feel that way. I don't know if he's going to be a franchise left tackle moving forward. I just don't know. Right? And again, if we can trade back, that's great. It takes 2 to tango. Mm-hmm. I'm also just not trading back to 12, just straight back to 12. I'm not doing that. Right? If I'm taking pennies on the dollar to move back because that team doesn't really want to move up,
just take the guy you like at 4.
Right. You know, that doesn't do me any good. Yeah, and so, you know, that's really where it comes down to. And listen, Tyler Warren might be great. He might be a great player, maybe the next great tight end. He's not getting drafted in the top 5. Like, you just don't do that. I'm sorry, you don't do that. I don't care. I don't care. That's the other part of it. Not for us, because we have so many needs. Listen, I'm just praying to everything holy that the Ravens are dumb enough to let Ronnie Stanley walk. And if they are, you sign Ronnie Stanley to be your left tackle. And now you feel like, okay, we have a starting left tackle. We have a starting right guard. I guess we have a starting center in David Andrews, although I don't know what he's going to look like next year. You know, then what happens at right tackle? What happens at left guard? I don't know. But I feel a lot better about my offensive line because I actually have a left tackle. And now I can draft a guy that I think can start at right tackle, or I can sign another guy that I can think it can start at right tackle, or I can, give Wallace another another opportunity at right tackle. And I can come into camp with 3 or 4 guys that I think can be my right tackle this year, right? And I think that for me at least, that feels like, all right, we feel like we know what we're doing. At least that spot, And then it's, I mean, look, as Ronnie Stanley, as TD points out, Ronnie Stanley was 31. That's true. I don't care. Like he's going to play for 4 or 5 more years. Like it's not like he's retiring next year.
Well, he's a high quality Band-Aid. You sign him for 3 years. He's going to start at left tackle for 3 years. You draft someone in 2 years to groom as the replacement. Is kind of your idea there,
right?
Which is how you got to go about it when you're a rebuilding team. It's not every move is going to be with the championship in mind right now. Some of them are going to be about fixing a hole for a couple of years, and then you patch it again or find a long-term solution the next time it becomes an issue.
Right.
You know what I was saying? Because I was rewatching that 2011 AFC Championship game after watching the Matt Patricia thing. Yeah. You know what Patriot we never talk about? Number 54, right guard on that line. Is it Brian Waters?
Oh, my Lord. Yeah.
Yeah. They had a hole at guard. They went out and signed someone. He fixed the problem for a year. They went to the Super Bowl. Then he left. Or it might have been 2 years that he was here, whatever it was.
I think it was 2. I think he came back in 2012 and he wasn't the same guy, but he was old too. He was a phenomenal guy. I don't know if he's a Hall of Famer yet or not, but if he isn't, he's awfully damn close because I feel like he was a Pro Bowler for like 12 straight years in Kansas City. So,
useful player, and like that's sometimes that's how it is. On that note, somebody I don't think will be in New England who is on the market now is Cooper Kupp, who's out of LA. They're going to be trading him. I love Cooper Kupp. I think he'd be amazing in this offense. Giving up a top 100 pick to get a 32-year-old wide receiver with injury issues, that is not something that is in the best long-term interest of this team.
Will it take a top 100 pick to get him, though?
Yeah, he's good enough to get that. He'll get a third or a fourth.
You would think, but I don't know.
Hey, look, if you can get Cooper Kupp for a 5th, hell yeah, I'm all in. But, I just don't think.
Which I guess is close to a top 100 pick, but.
You know what I saw that was interesting was the idea of putting him in Sean Payton's offense and sending him to Denver. And that feels like the kind of team that absolutely would be aggressive with draft capital and looking for someone and who thinks that they're kind of in a window and getting closer with how Denver played this year. And he compliments guys they already have in the building. He compliments Cortland Sutton. So that I think would be a very interesting destination for him. Also another one, depending on what happens with Stephon Diggs, would be Houston.
Yeah.
Who just signed Nick Caley, the offensive coordinator, today from that Rams system.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. So, yeah, lots of different options, lots of interesting options too. So,
TD says that Cooper Kupp is going to get cut. He is not going to get cut. He's a good receiver, and they're going to get a draft pick back.
Yeah, no shot, 0% chance that that's going to happen.
Somebody's given up a pick, and there'll be at least 2 teams interested, so they'll get market value, which will probably be 4th round pick if I had to guess. High 4th, low 3rd.
Yeah, good point.
You know what else? You know where else he'd be interesting? I don't know if it would be a scheme fit, but Buffalo.
Yeah, I mean Buffalo need help at wide receiver, man. Keon Coleman faded down the end of the year.
Put him in the Mac Hollins role.
Yeah.
They used Mac Hollins as like a wide receiver tight end hybrid almost.
They kind of did, didn't they? Yeah.
Yeah.
So that would be an interesting spot to put him. Kind of throw him in the slot almost. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that would make Shakira's life a lot easier too.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. There's a lot of people saying to get rid of Kendrick Bourne in the chat. I don't get that. Like, usually guys bounce back 2 years removed from the knee injury. Bourne has familiarity with McDaniel's system. I think Bourne is more likely to be a guy who's a real contributor for you this year.
Right. Yeah, I also just think your wide receiving core sucks. You need professional wide receivers. Like, at least KB is a professional wide receiver. He may not be the greatest wide receiver in the world, but he's a professional wide receiver. That's the type of thing that the Patriots need. So
when he's, a low end 3, high end 4 at this point in his career, probably. If he bounces back well from his knee injury, he could be all the way up to like a real low end number 2 receiver for you. Playmaker who, inconsistent but can do some real special things on the field for you.
Right.
That's a great guy to
You
play
don't
with
have
Trey
guys
May.
like that. Right. You don't have guys like that. So
yeah, and if you're going out there with Booty, Bourne, and Pop as your 2, 3, and 4, and you can find a T. Higgins or a Chris Godwin, whoever to slot into that number 1 role, okay, you have a real receiving core now. It's not special, but you're not in the bottom 5 anymore.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah,
agreed. So
and maybe they get some to Jalen Polk or Javon Baker. Maybe.
Yeah, you never know. So
I hope.
Yeah. So we'll see. All right, let's do our prize picks and get the people out of here. Just past 11 o'clock. So my pick for the Super Bowl, again, I'll give it to you again. Patrick Mahomes, free square, more than 0.5 passing yards. Xavier Worthy with more than 6.5 rushing yards. And Jalen Hurts with more than 0.5 rushing plus receiving yards. Receiving TDs, I'm sorry.
I like it. My picks here, I'm going to start with a kicker. Why don't we start with a kicker prop here?
Okay.
Jake Elliott, more than 1.5 field goals made.
Okay.
He's got a leg. You're in a dome. And he's scored points for them lately. I think he can get 2 field goals in there.
He does have a leg. It's a good point.
Yeah. And the other one, Patrick Mahomes, more than 30.5 rushing yards.
Okay.
I think if the Eagles are selling out to put a cap on this offense, it's going to give opportunities for Mahomes to just take off and run with it. And, we see him use his legs a lot more in the bigger games. He saves it for those moments. So, we remember last year's Super Bowl, the 4th down in overtime, taking off with it. That's what he can do. So I think we see a lot more of that this Sunday.
Yeah. Yeah, I also think too what's interesting is for Hurts, and I don't know how, if he's hurt or injured or whatever the case may be, but I think the Bills didn't do nearly enough with Josh Allen running the ball. I think for the Eagles to really be successful, they're going to need to run the ball with Jalen Hurts a little bit. But we'll see.
Yeah.
So anyways, well, thank you for tuning in, everyone. We really appreciate it. We have a very, very, very special show coming out later on this week. I am having the opportunity to sit down with 2 current Patriots players. I won't tell you who they are, but one of them may have been an All-Pro this year. But I'm going to have the opportunity to sit down with 2 current Patriots players, which is pretty cool. It will not be a live show, but it will be out later on this week. And so I had to maneuver some things around in my schedule, but I was able to secure the interview, which I'm pretty excited about. And so that will be later on this week. So definitely don't miss that. And then Matt and I will be back early next week to give our fallout for the Super Bowl and a few other things as well. And we'll get kind of more into that draft, and we're going to start pretty soon doing some 7-round live mock drafts on the show. And also we'll be releasing mock drafts on Pat's Pulpit as we go as well. So
before we go, just in 20 seconds or less, Luka Doncic traded.
That's right.
Thoughts?
We didn't even talk about it.
Biggest trade maybe in sports history. Most shocking
complete
trade
insanity.
in sports history.
Complete insanity. This guy, the GM for the Mavericks. I don't know. Have you heard the Steph Curry story with him?
Yes.
So, like, for those of you that aren't familiar, okay, he was working for Nike. He was the guy that was giving the pitch to Steph Curry to sign with Nike. And he screwed up his name multiple times, called him Seth multiple times, which is insane. Used the same presentation that they were using for Kevin Durant on Steph Curry. And I think also lowballed him in that offer. And so Curry left Nike and went to Under Armour instead, which is insane. So that's crazy. And then Luka, listen, feel however you want to feel about Luka. You feel however you want to feel about Luka, right? Is he too heavy? Yeah, sure. Could he be in better conditioning shape? Absolutely. I definitely agree with that. He's also 25 years old and one of the 10 to 15 one of the 5 to 10 best players in the NBA. Has he been injured a little too much? Yeah. Should he take his conditioning more seriously? Absolutely. You don't trade a guy like that and not shop him to everyone. Maybe you wanted Anthony Davis. Sure. Okay, sure. I don't believe it, but absolutely. You wanted Anthony Davis, and that's why you made this move. If you had shopped him around, you could have gotten offers significantly more than this. And instead, you didn't. It's complete insanity to me. I mean, let's put it this way. De'Aaron Fox was traded on the same day Luka Donic was traded. And the Sacramento Kings got more in return for De'Aaron Fox. Marcus Smart was traded last offseason and got more for Luka, got more back from Marcus Smart than the Mavs did for Luka Doncic.
Well, I do think a lot of this depends on what your evaluation is of what Anthony Davis is right now. Because if you think Anthony Davis is an elite player, then you probably feel pretty good about the return. I don't know. I'm a Luka hater, so I was a little bit less surprised by this than others. But like I do think you saw in the finals last year that Luka, his lack of conditioning and his inability to play defense, like the best teams in the NBA all have elite wing players. If your wing player can't end any of those guys, you have to very specifically build a team around him, like cater to this in like very niche ways. That can be very tough. I don't know if this is the best trade, but I did think I was listening to Bill Simmons on it and kind of the rationalizing of it. And they talked about how it seemed like the Mavs realized that what they really needed was some kind of post player, some size who could help them out. When you look at the guys who are available, who could really help you, it's like Anthony Davis, Giannis, Jason Tatum. Like that's basically it for guys in this tier. And yeah, should they have shot Luka to those teams too? Probably. But you might also risk other drama that comes up with it. So like I think it's silly. I think it's foolish to not shop him. But like I also kind of get how you get to that point where it's like we've already identified the player that we would like in return for this year's team. And it's just clear that internally, like they are out on Luka. Like they just did not. They clearly did not have confidence that you could win a championship with him, which is kind of crazy. But also, I kind of get it. Like I can't. Like
they were in the championship with him literally last season.
But here's the thing. Outside of that, weren't they in the play-in the year before? Aren't they outside the playoffs right now? I'm pretty sure. I don't know.
Because he's been hurt.
Sure, but like, I don't know. Is it possible that last year was an anomaly and it's the best it's ever going to get with him, and they kind of realized that, sold high, and they're moving off? I don't think it's the most likely outcome, but if we looked back in 5 years and it was like, oh, Luka just never really got to that level again and never saw the playoff success, I wouldn't be shocked by it. Now, this said, like I have seen a lot of comparisons for the NFL for what kind of trade this is. And I think I haven't seen people land on this one player, which I think is probably the most apt comparison to make. This would be like trading Joe Burrow after the Bengals-Rams Super Bowl.
Yes. I thought that was a great comparison. I did see someone else do that.
Oh, I didn't. Okay, good.
Joe Burrow, and then what you're getting back in return is really questionable. That's the hard thing, is I don't know what you're getting back in return, because there's not really a quarterback out there that.
Well, that's the comparison breaks down between leagues.
Correct, of course, right?
Yeah.
And so I just look. Maybe the Mavs are right, and maybe Luka will never take them to that golden, right? We'll never get them there and never get them over the hump, and that's certainly possible. But I look at it and just think, you have one of those guys, right? And until they win, you always wonder if they could win. I mean, think about how long we went back and forth about the Jays and whether the Jays would ever be good enough to win a championship together. And if we shouldn't break them up and go from the, I just, that's a real interesting one for me. And what's so funny is that I actually, a few years back, was like, well, what if you traded, I forget who I said Tatum around. I forget. What if you traded Tatum around for multiple first round picks and Domantas Sabonis? And Sabonis.
That was a big, hot idea at the time.
And Sabonis was a guy that, I can tell you right now, he's on my fantasy team this year, so I'll just tell you what he's averaging this year. The guy's an absolute monster, right? Now, he plays for Sacramento, and Sacramento is getting better, right? But this season so far, he's averaging 20.8, 14.4 with 6.5 assists a game. Last year, he averaged 19.4, 13.7, and 8.2, with almost a full steal per game and more than a half a block a game. He just does everything, and he does everything well. But, are you going to win with him? Is he truly a dominant player? Not necessarily, right? And so, that's the thing. He's really good, and he fills the stat line, but, when you need a shot at the end of the game, are you going to Domantas Sabonis? Probably not.
Well,
I think he was definitely a snub for the All-Star game, but that doesn't matter. I think that he's not a superstar. He's a very good player. He's a really good post presence and a really good player, but he's not a superstar,
Now, I think you talk about the Jays and the whole discussion about splitting them up in comparison. I think that's actually a great comparison for some of the off-court stuff, because the Celtics go to the finals and Jaylen Brown kind of gets exposed throughout the finals, becomes a meme in the NBA community for how poorly he played.
Yeah.
And he basically spent the next 2 off seasons doing everything, working incredibly hard to fix those flaws in his game, and came back better. Luka went to the championship series, got exposed for some of his flaws, and then showed up overweight, didn't really work on anything in the offseason. And it's
it's a fair point.
I get that. From the competitor in you looked at that and says, man, you got that close to winning, and nothing inside you went, man, I got to get that next edge to get better. You just kind of showed up and kept going. I get why someone would look at that and say, this guy's not going to win, and we just need to sell high. I just don't think if you're selling high on Luka, this is not. Well, and this is the weird thing, is that they sold high in a way that was them trying to win with this year's team.
It's not even selling high.
No, because high for them is maximizing this year's roster. That's why they wanted specifically AD and didn't care that much about the draft picks. I think that's silly. It's your whole team is now built around Kyrie and AD, 2 of the most unreliable players in the league.
Right.
If it works out, they could win a championship this year. Will it? Probably not, because these guys aren't those dudes.
Yeah, I agree. So, anyways, let's talk basketball. Thanks for tuning in.
One of those things that's so big. I think every podcast has been talking about that today.
It literally, what someone was saying was funny, because it happened, of course, the night before the Grammys, and Kanye goes on epic rants on Twitter once every few months or whatever, and apparently he did it on Saturday night. I didn't see it, but like, I feel like internet-wise, a lot of people usually talk about that, and like this stole the thunder for all that. Everyone was like, "Wait, Luka got traded? Like, what are we doing?" So
I was going to bed Saturday night, and I just saw the notification came in and sent it to my friends, and then we were all up for another hour talking about like what.
Yeah, same as I think. It's wild. It's wild. Someone tweeted out, Stephen Che from Barstool tweeted out, if a baby was conceived during the finals, that he would be born with Luka on the Lakers. That's how quickly the trade was made. That's just insane. Wild. So,
yeah.
But, anyways.
Yeah, and Luka's a good player. I'm Mavs and the Lakers are good. Like, I'm not that big of an NBA fan, but like whenever his debut is with the Lakers, I will be tuning in.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
My last note on this is that this doesn't make sense to me for the Lakers, really, because at least short term, like we've got two bigs who like to play kind of as point guards, who are ball centric, who don't play great defense on the same team. Like, what is this roster construction? How does the Luka LeBron thing work together?
And Austin Reeves doesn't really play defense that well either. So like, it's a really interesting mix. I guess they're just banking on the fact that they are going to score 1 million points every night. But like, I don't know. It's really, I don't know.
I think this is one where they realized we can get Luka and not have to get the farm for it. So we're just going to do it and figure out the rest later.
Well, I think that's part of it, right? Where like, they don't care. They, they're like, we're set for the next 10 years because we have a legit superstar.
Yeah, and then you kind of trade LeBron in the offseason or whatever and get the assets around Luka and let LeBron go have one more run somewhere else. Like, potentially,
that's certainly possible too. So, by the way, the interesting thing, someone was talking about the modern NBA. So I played 1-on-1 against one of my former students after practice on Sunday, and so we played 1-on-1. There's no rebounds in 1-on-1 anymore. It's an offensive possession, but it's one shot. You just get a shot. So you play the possession and then you shoot, but if you miss, there's no rebound. It just goes to the other player.
What?
Which is the weirdest thing ever. This is yes.
You got hustle.
This is TikTok basketball. This is TikTok basketball now. This is what the kids do, which is why we have such a hard time getting them to rebound defensively and offensively, because they think the possession is over when the shot goes up, which is not. But when you're watching these TikTok guys, there's no rebounds. There's just, I'm going to get an open shot and I'm going to hit it. And it's like, what? So
follow your miss.
The first play, right? I shot it. I missed. I ducked under his arm, grabbed the rebound, and laid it in. And he's like, no, that's not a point. And I'm like, what do you mean it's not a point? What are you talking about? It's 1-on-1. And he's like, no, that's not the way we play anymore. And I was like, get out of here, dude. And so
I played 1-on-1 in college for all 4 years, and not once did we ever play by those rules.
That's what I'm saying, man. Those are the new. And again, I mean, we could have played anyway. I could have said, no, we're playing with rebounds, but I didn't. I was like, whatever, I'll just play it your way. It's fine. But that's the new way of playing. The kids play now. They don't rebound anymore. And it's like, it's the new style of basketball that everyone's worried about, 1-on-1 and making a move and driving by someone and pull up game and float game and all this other stuff. And, and getting a good shot and not worrying about following it, not worrying about hustling, not worrying about doing those things. So it's really an interesting look into, I was like, wait, what do you mean? There's no, and then I was like, you know what? I've seen like videos on TikTok of guys playing basketball and they don't ever rebound the basketball. They're just, when they play 1-on-1, it's just going back. So
those guys are going to be for a rude awakening when they're playing real ball.
Yeah, I would agree.
There's a reason why Jason Tatum's one of the best in the game right now, because he can do all the fancy stuff, but he does the fundamentals as well as anyone too.
That's correct. Yep, that is correct. So, but anyways, all right, that's it. So thanks for tuning in, everyone. Really appreciate it, and enjoy the game on Sunday. And we will talk to you next week. All right. And again, be on the lookout for that show later on this week with two current Patriots cornerbacks. Well, So, yeah, that should be fun. But we'll talk to you soon.